The house on Cedar Avenue smelled like bleach. Not the kind you notice after someone mops the floor. The kind that burns your nose when you walk in. The kind that makes you wonder what someone is trying so hard to cover up. The curtains were drawn tight, even in the middle of the afternoon. Candles flickered on every surface. Vanilla, lavender, something floral, all of it mixing with that sharp chemical scent until the air felt thick enough to choke on. And in the center of the room, on a bed made with hospital corners, lay the still body of a woman who had spent her final months in complete silence. Her husband sat on the edge of that same bed, his back straight, his hands folded in his lap, staring at nothing. When the officers asked him what happened, he didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just whispered 5 chilling words that would echo through courtrooms and living rooms across the country. Better dead than shamed. What could drive a man to believe that death was more honorable than truth? What kind of fear makes silence feel safer than help? Tonight we're going to uncover the story that shook a quiet New York suburb to its core. A story about pride and fear and a secret so devastating it destroyed everything it touched. Welcome to Silent Witness, True Crime Stories. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe, and also download your free ebook by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Coleman was 52 years old when she died. She had soft gray eyes and the kind of smile that made people feel comfortable around her. The kind of woman who remembered your birthday and brought you soup when you were sick. She volunteered at Brookside Nursing Home every Tuesday and Thursday, reading to residents who couldn't hold books anymore. She hummed while she folded laundry. She kept a garden in the backyard with tomatoes and basil and sunflowers that grew taller than the fence. Her neighbors on Cedar Avenue described her as kind, quiet, dependable. The type of person you'd trust with your spare key. Richard Coleman was 56, a veteran. Spent 12 years in the Army before settling down in civilian life. He ran a hardware store on Main Street that his father had opened back in the 70s. Richard was the kind of man who fixed things. Lawnmowers, screen doors, relationships, or so he thought. He believed in order, in discipline, in keeping your problems to yourself and handling them with dignity. He wore his hair short, his shirts pressed. He shook hands firmly and looked people in the eye. People respected him. From the outside, the Colemans looked like the kind of couple you'd want to be. Stable, rooted, faithful. They attended Sunday service at St. Matthew's Episcopal Church. They waved to their neighbors. They paid their bills on time. But inside that house with the trimmed hedges and the American flag by the front door, something had started to crack. It began so quietly that no one noticed, not even Eleanor herself at first. She started skipping her shifts at the nursing home, just once in a while, a headache, a sore throat. Nothing serious. Then she stopped going to her book club. The women called a few times, but Eleanor always had an excuse. Too tired, too busy, maybe next month. She stopped wearing perfume, stopped putting on lipstick before leaving the house. Then she stopped leaving the house altogether. Her sister Diane lived 20 minutes away and used to come by every Sunday after church for coffee. But Eleanor started canceling. Texting instead of calling, saying she wasn't feeling well, saying Richard had things to do, saying maybe next week. Diane thought it was strange, but she didn't push. You don't pry into someone's marriage. You don't ask questions that might make things uncomfortable. So she let it go. Richard noticed the changes, too. His wife had become distant. She slept with her back to him. She flinched when he touched her shoulder. She started doing laundry in the middle of the night, running the washer over and over until he could hear the pipes groaning through the walls. When he asked her what was wrong, she said she was fine. Just tired, just getting older. He didn't believe her, but he didn't push either. Richard had been raised to see illness as weakness, to see vulnerability as something shameful. Something you handled privately. So he let her be. He moved his things into the guest room and told himself it was temporary. But the smell started a few weeks later. Faint at first, like something spoiled in the trash. Eleanor scrubbed the kitchen, bleached the bathroom, lit candles in every room. But the smell didn't go away. It followed her. It clung to her clothes and her hair and the sheets on her side of the bed. She started showering 3 times a day, scrubbing her skin until it turned red. She bought new soap, new shampoo, new laundry detergent. Nothing helped. She knew what it was. Deep down, she knew, but admitting it felt impossible. So she stayed quiet. She wrote in her journal late at night when Richard was asleep, her handwriting shaky and small. Something is wrong with me. I can smell it. I know he can too, but I can't tell him. If he knew, he'd never look at me the same. He'd be disgusted. He'd leave. Or worse, he'd stay out of duty and look at me every day like I'm broken, like I'm less than human. The pain started around the same time, a dull ache at first, then sharp, then constant. She took ibuprofen by the handful. She pressed ice packs against her body through her clothes. She bit down on washcloths to keep from crying out. At night, she'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, feeling her heartbeat in places it shouldn't be, feeling heat and pressure and something wet that shouldn't be there. She thought about going to the doctor. She'd pick up her phone, open her insurance app, stare at the list of providers, but then she'd imagine sitting in that sterile office, imagine undressing, imagine the look on the doctor's face, the nurses whispering in the hallway, the questions, the judgment. And she'd put the phone down. She Googled her symptoms late at night in private browsing mode. The results terrified her. Infections, bacteria, necrosis. She read about women who'd waited too long, women who'd lost parts of themselves, women who'd died. She cleared her search history every time. Richard started to notice the smell too. He didn't say anything at first. He just opened windows, bought air fresheners, sprayed Febreze on the furniture when Eleanor wasn't looking, but it kept getting worse. One morning, he finally said something. "Eleanor, what is that smell?" She was standing at the kitchen sink, her back to him. Her hands went still in the soapy water. "I don't know what you mean." "You know exactly what I mean. It's been weeks. It's in the bedroom. It's in the bathroom. It's everywhere." She didn't turn around. "Maybe it's the garbage disposal. I'll clean it." "It's not the garbage disposal." His voice was cold, not concerned, not gentle, just cold. "Then I don't know, Richard. Maybe it's you." He didn't respond, just walked out of the room. That night he slept with the guest room door closed. Eleanor sat on the edge of their bed, alone in the dark, and cried so quietly that no one could hear. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. 3 months passed. Eleanor stopped answering the phone altogether. Her sister Diane drove over one afternoon unannounced. She knocked on the door for 5 minutes before Eleanor finally opened it. Just a crack. Chain lock still on. "Hey, stranger," Diane said, trying to smile. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by." "This isn't a good time." "Eleanor, I haven't seen you in months. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just busy." "Can I come in for a minute?" "Not today." Diane could smell it, even through the crack in the door, something sour and wrong. But she didn't say anything. She didn't want to embarrass her sister. She didn't want to make things awkward. "Okay," Diane said softly. "Call me later?" "I will." She didn't. Richard's friends at the hardware store noticed he seemed distracted, irritable. He snapped at a customer over a return, forgot to order supplies, stayed late to avoid going home. When one of his buddies asked if everything was all right, Richard just said, "Marriage stuff, nothing I can't handle." But he wasn't handling it, he was avoiding it. He started eating dinner at the diner down the street, started finding excuses to work weekends, started sleeping with a towel under the guest room door to block out the smell. He was ashamed, not of Eleanor, of the situation, of what people might think if they knew. He imagined the guys at the store finding out, imagined the looks, the whispers, imagined people pitching their voices low when he walked by, Richard Coleman couldn't even take care of his own wife. He thought about confronting her, really confronting her, forcing her to see a doctor. But then he thought about what the doctor might say, what tests they might run, what might be written on a chart. And he stayed silent. Eleanor stopped eating. She'd make Richard's meals and leave them on the counter, but she'd just pick at crackers and drink water. She lost weight. Her clothes hung loose. Her cheekbones started to show. Her skin looked gray. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. One night she wrote in her journal, "I think I'm dying. I think I've known for a while. But I'd rather die quietly than live with everyone knowing what's wrong with me." Is that crazy? Maybe. But it feels like the only choice I have left. If you were in Eleanor's position, what would you have done? Would you have reached out for help, even if it meant facing shame? Or would you have stayed silent to protect your dignity? Let us know in the comments. We'd really like to hear your thoughts. By early November, Eleanor hadn't left the house in 6 weeks. The mailman noticed the pile of unclaimed packages on the porch. The neighbors noticed the garden had gone brown and wild. Diane stopped by again. This time no one answered. She called. No answer. She texted. Nothing. She called Richard's store. He picked up on the first ring. "Richard, it's Diane. I'm worried about Eleanor." "She's fine. I've been trying to reach her for days. She's resting. She hasn't been feeling well." "Can I talk to her? Just for a minute?" There was a long pause. "Not right now. I'll have her call you." "Richard, I said I'll have her call you." He hung up. Diane sat in her car outside the house on Cedar Avenue, staring at the drawn curtains. Something felt wrong, really wrong. But what could she do? Call the police and say her sister wasn't answering the phone? That felt extreme. So she went home, and she waited. 2 weeks later, a neighbor named Mrs. Alvarez called the non-emergency line. She told the dispatcher that she hadn't seen Eleanor Coleman in over a month, that there was a strange smell coming from the property, that Richard's car was there, but the house looked dark and abandoned. The dispatcher sent 2 officers for a wellness check. They arrived on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Officer Mitchell knocked on the door. Richard answered almost immediately. He looked tired, thinner, but calm. "Good afternoon, sir. We got a call from a concerned neighbor, just checking in to make sure everything's all right." "Everything's fine." "Is your wife home?" "She is." "Can we speak with her?" Richard hesitated. Then he opened the door wider. "Come in." The smell hit them immediately, chemical and sweet and rotten all at once. Officer Mitchell's eyes watered. Officer Park covered her nose. The house was dark, every curtain drawn, candles burning on the coffee table, the kitchen counter, the mantel. "Where is she?" Officer Park asked. Richard pointed down the hallway. "In the bedroom." They followed him. He walked slowly, deliberately, like he was leading them on a tour. The bedroom door was open. The smell was strongest there. Eleanor lay on the bed, covered with a clean white sheet pulled up to her chin. Her eyes were closed, her hands folded over her chest. Candles surrounded the bed, dozens of them. Officer Mitchell stepped closer. "Sir, is she—" "She's gone," Richard said quietly. Officer Park immediately radioed for backup, for an ambulance, for detectives. Richard didn't move. He just stood there, staring at his wife's body. "How long has she been like this?" Mitchell asked. 2 days. "And you didn't call anyone?" Richard's jaw tightened. "I was going to. I just needed time." "Time for what?" He didn't answer. When the paramedics arrived, they confirmed what everyone already knew. Eleanor Coleman was dead. Had been for at least 48 hours. But what stunned the investigators wasn't how she died. It was what they found inside her bedside drawer. Detective Laura Santos arrived an hour later. She'd been with the county's major crimes unit for 11 years. She'd seen a lot. But this case felt different. The house felt different. Everything was too clean, too staged, like someone had been preparing for this moment. She pulled on gloves and walked through each room. The kitchen was spotless, the bathroom bleached, the living room vacuumed. But in the bedroom, under the candles and the smell of vanilla, there was something else. Decay. Detective Santos knelt beside the bed and opened the nightstand drawer. Inside, she found a small leather journal. She flipped it open. Eleanor's handwriting filled every page. Entries dated back 6 months. Santos sat on the floor and read. March 18th. Something's wrong. I don't know what yet, but I feel it. April 2nd. The smell started. I've tried everything. Nothing works. I'm so embarrassed. April 20th. The pain is getting worse. I can't sleep. I can't think, but I can't tell Richard. He'll think I'm disgusting. May 15th. I looked it up. I think it's an infection. A bad one. I know I should see a doctor, but I can't. I just can't. June 3rd. Richard moved into the guest room. He won't even look at me anymore. I don't blame him. July 10th. I'm so tired. I just want it to stop. August 22nd. I think I'm dying. Maybe that's okay. At least then it'll be over. At least then no one will have to know. The last entry was dated November 9th, 2 days before the police arrived. I told Richard I need help. He said we'd handle it at home. He said going to the hospital would humiliate us both. He said some things are better kept private. I think he's right. I think I'd rather die than have everyone know what's happening to me. God forgive me. Santos closed the journal. Her hands were shaking. She walked back to the living room where Richard was sitting on the couch, flanked by 2 officers. Mr. Coleman, I need to ask you some questions. I already told them everything. When did you know your wife was sick? I didn't. Not really. She wrote in her journal that she told you she needed help. Richard's face didn't change. She was confused. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was in pain. She was dying. And you did nothing. I did what I thought was best. Which was what, exactly? I kept her comfortable. I kept her dignified. You let her rot in your bedroom. Richard's eyes flashed. Don't you dare say that. I loved my wife. I took care of her. I made sure she didn't suffer. She suffered for months. Not like she would have if I'd taken her to some hospital, if I'd let strangers poke and prod her, if I'd let the whole world see her like that. Santos stared at him. You were more worried about being embarrassed than saving her life. Richard stood up. You don't understand. Eleanor was a proud woman. She didn't want people knowing her business. She didn't want pity. She wanted to be left alone. She wanted help. And I gave it to her. By letting her die? Richard's voice rose. By letting her die with dignity, by keeping her shame private. Better dead than shamed. She knew that. I knew that. And now it's done. The room went silent. Officer Mitchell stepped forward. Richard Coleman, you're under arrest. The medical examiner's report came back 3 days later. Eleanor Coleman had died from septic shock, caused by necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria. It had started as a small infection, treatable if caught early, but it had gone untreated for months. The bacteria had spread through her tissue, destroying everything in its path. By the time she died, the infection had ravaged nearly a third of her lower body. The pain must have been unbearable. The report also noted signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration. Eleanor had essentially stopped eating and drinking in her final weeks. Her body had shut down. The medical examiner wrote in his notes, "Patient would have survived with basic medical intervention. Death was entirely preventable." Detective Santos sat in her office reading the report over and over. She thought about Eleanor's journal, about the way she'd apologized for being sick, about the way she'd chosen death over shame, and she thought about Richard, about his cold, flat voice, about the way he'd justified everything. Better dead than shamed. At Richard's arraignment, the prosecutor charged him with second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. The argument was simple. Richard had known his wife was dying, he had been told directly, and he had refused to get her help. Not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. The defense attorney argued that Eleanor had refused treatment herself, that Richard was simply honoring her wishes, that he was a grieving husband being punished for respecting his wife's autonomy. But the journal told a different story. Eleanor had wanted help. She'd begged for it in her own quiet way, and Richard had said no. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The courtroom was packed every day. Diane sat in the front row, clutching Eleanor's journal. She testified about her sister, about how kind she was, how selfless, how she'd always put everyone else first. She would have been so ashamed to have people see her like that, Diane said through tears, but she didn't deserve to die for it. Richard's friends from the hardware store testified too. They said he was a good man, a hard worker, a veteran who loved his country and his wife. They said he'd been raised a certain way, that he believed in privacy and dignity and handling your own problems. The defense painted him as old-fashioned, traditional, a man out of step with modern expectations but not a criminal. The prosecutor saw it differently. She called Richard controlling, cruel, a man who valued his reputation more than his wife's life. During cross-examination, she asked Richard directly, "Did you love your wife?" "Yes." "Did you want her to die?" "No." "But you let her." "I respected her wishes." "Her wishes or yours?" Richard's jaw clenched. "She didn't want to be humiliated. So you let her die in agony instead." "I let her die with dignity." "Is that what you call it? Dignity?" Richard leaned forward. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You don't understand what it's like to watch someone you love fall apart, to see them lose pieces of themselves, to smell the sickness on them and know there's nothing you can do. I couldn't save her, but I could save her from shame, from pity, from people looking at her like she was broken. So you decided for her." "I decided with her. She wrote in her journal that she wanted help. She also wrote that she'd rather die than be exposed, and I honored that. By doing nothing. By doing what she wanted." The prosecutor held up the journal. "She wanted to live, Mr. Coleman. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to matter. And you let her believe that her shame was more important than her life." Richard didn't respond. The jury deliberated for 2 days. They found him guilty of criminally negligent homicide, not murder, not manslaughter, but negligence. The judge sentenced him to 8 years. During his sentencing statement, Richard stood and spoke. "I loved my wife. I did what I thought was right. If people want to call that a crime, fine, but I know I gave her what she wanted. Peace, privacy, respect, and I'd do it again." The courtroom erupted. Half the room in outrage, half in conflicted silence. Eleanor Coleman was buried on a cold morning in December. The service was small, just family. Diane read a passage from one of Eleanor's favorite books. "We are not defined by our suffering, but by how we choose to face it." After the service, Diane stood alone by the grave. A reporter approached and asked if she had anything to say. Diane looked at the headstone. Eleanor Marie Coleman, beloved sister, beloved wife. "My sister spent her whole life taking care of other people," Diane said quietly. "And when she needed someone to take care of her, she was too afraid to ask. She thought being sick made her less, made her shameful, and the person who should have told her otherwise just let her believe it." She wiped her eyes. "I think about what I could have done differently. I think about the times I didn't push, the times I let her cancel plans or avoid my calls. I told myself I was respecting her space. But maybe I was just scared of the truth." Diane looked directly at the camera. "If someone you love is pulling away, don't let them. Don't let pride or shame or fear keep you from reaching out. Because silence doesn't protect anyone. It just kills slower." In the months after the trial, Eleanor's story spread. It was covered by local news, then national, then online. People debated it endlessly. Some said Richard was a monster. Others said he was a victim of his upbringing. Some said Eleanor should have spoken up. Others said the shame women are taught to carry killed her long before the infection did. Detective Santos kept a copy of Eleanor's journal in her desk. She read it sometimes when cases got heavy, when she needed to remember why the work mattered. One entry stayed with her. "I still love him. I just wish he could see that I'm still me. That being broken doesn't make me less. That needing help doesn't mean I've failed, but I don't think he can. And maybe that's my fault too." In the end, Eleanor's story wasn't really about death. It was about silence, about the way shame can wrap itself around you so tightly that asking for help feels impossible, about the way pride can blind you to the person right in front of you who's falling apart. It was about two people who loved each other in their own broken way, but couldn't find the words to save each other. The house on Cedar Avenue still stands. New owners moved in last spring. They painted the shutters, tore out the carpet, planted new flowers in the garden. But sometimes, late at night, neighbors say they can still smell something faint in the air, something chemical and sweet, something that won't quite go away. What do you think really happened in that house? Was Richard protecting Eleanor's dignity, or was he protecting himself from embarrassment? Could she have been saved if someone had just asked the right question? And what would you have done if you were her sister, her neighbor, or her husband? We want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story affected you the way it affected us, please hit that like button. It helps us bring more stories like this to people who need to hear them. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our next video. Thank you for watching. And remember, reaching out isn't weakness, it's courage. And sometimes it's the only thing that can save a life.